Because you're only as good as the last envelope you drop.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
How many times have you heard the story? You know, when you go in that life, it's going to be 6 of your friends that do it to you.
Yeah. Hello, Tom LaVecchia here with a very special in-studio edition of the New Theory Podcast. I never thought this day was going to happen. I don't think my guest, who I'm about to announce, think this was going to happen. But today we have in the studio our second studio interview with Jeff Canarsie, also runs Mob Talk Radio. For those that know, the kind of mob genre took off during the pandemic. I'll just say the P word, not the C word. I don't want to get demonetized. And took off between informants, current podcasters that are doing a switch to the mob genre, or people that have been around. And this guy is literally the founder of this space. Jeff Canarsie, welcome to the New Theory Podcast. How you doing today?
Good, thanks, Tom. Glad to be here.
Did you ever think, A, you would be on my show, and B, sitting across from me at a table?
Without violence, no.
Exactly. Jeff has been critical on me, and we'll get to that in a little bit, and I respect Jeff. So, you know, typically when people give criticism, they generally don't have the moral authority, but Jeff does and did. So we're going to jump right in. There's a lot of where the hell are you from? Give us your formative years and what kind of helped shape you as a man that you are today.
Oh, boy. So I was born in New York City, obviously. But the reason why I'm going to preface it this way is because there seems to be a distortion. I was adopted, and I was to not get too detailed, but I was sort of left in a crib to die.
Hey.
And EMS was called, kicked in the doors, took me, went through the court system. My biological father was in the Navy, refused to get off his ship, didn't give a shit. Okay.
Wow.
My father, the man I call my father, was the commanding officer of that ship.
Oh, wow.
And when he found out about it, he said, we got to get this kid help or whatever. At the time, Portsmouth Naval Hospital was the best hospital in the world for kids, and I had all kinds of
probably jaundice and everything.
All of that. Yeah. And I had a disease called Pierre-Robin syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Which comes with a cleft palate. Yeah. And they said I would never talk again, never walk.
Wow, you had a cleft palate?
Yeah.
Give me the name of that surgeon, please. Wow,
yeah, Dr. Shafu.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So I ended up in Portsmouth, Virginia.
Okay.
And at the time, my sister, who biologically isn't mine, had cancer. And she was getting cancer treatments. So every day they'd walk by this incubator, and there's this little kid, and my sister just always wanted to wave. And the short end of this is that my sister said to my mother, we should adopt him. My mother says, what are you, nuts? And she says, Mom, I'm going to die. And that'll be good. Wow. This is just coming from a 9-year-old little girl.
Wow.
That's how I ended up with them. And then my mother's side of the family's all from Providence.
Okay. And then did she make it?
No. She died when in 1978. I was a year old. I don't remember anything about her. But no matter how bad life has been, no matter what life throws at me, I'm kind of living for two.
Yeah.
Because if that little girl had never ever said nothing to my mother, I can promise you what would have happened to me would not have been good, just biologically speaking, because I know enough about my biological family to know that that wouldn't have been a good situation. So that's how I ended up with them. Wow. And how I ended up in the Northeast is my father was in the Navy, got transferred all the time.
Yeah.
And that's where I spent my formative years going back and forth between there and Virginia Beach, which everybody knows. Yeah. I've never hit that.
Yeah.
I think people want to question lineage because I was here 3 years, there 3 years. And if you understand Navy and the way that works,
and
you're
like
never
Navy brat, essentially.
Right. You never end up in one place. So all of my roots are in Providence, Federal Hill.
Yeah. Now, this is going to kind of resonate with some people, and some people are like, why do people care? But we're kind of in a space, and this is going to go to the New Theory channel, which is a little broader and more business people and stuff watch this stuff. But there seems to be some people that try to kind of get on you where you from, like, oh, well, he says he's from here, or, what I don't get is why does it matter where you're from? And you just answered it in 2 seconds, like meaning you were in Providence, you're in New York City, and so people getting on you. I heard West Virginia before, but who gives a shit where you're from? Like, why do you think people even care?
there was a content creator that called me Jewish for like a year.
Okay.
And I would always say, first of all, I'm Catholic.
Yeah.
Okay, half Italian, half Irish.
Yeah.
But if I was Jewish or if I was African American or I was Hispanic, how does that discredit me?
Yeah, even so, let's say you were Jewish and
right. How does that invalidate what I know, what I'm good at doing?
Correct.
It's the bottom of the barrel type of stuff they come up with, and that's all they can come up with.
Got it.
Because believe me, whatever people do know,
Yeah.
the things they don't know,
Yeah.
I laugh about. If this is what you're going to go with, and this
Yeah.
is how you're going to crucify me or attempt to,
Yeah.
okay. Obviously, you're not talking to other people because they could have told you more.
Yeah.
So I think anytime people can invalidate you because they don't like your success,
Yeah.
the best way to invalidate somebody is to try to find some flaw.
Yeah.
And we're all flawed. But at the end of the day, whether I'm Jewish, German, whatever the case may be, what the hell does that matter?
Yeah, that's kind of weird. So okay, so we talked about kind of the boom a little bit in the introduction of the mob genre, right?
Right.
At this point, you got like Francis, you have Sammy, and then you kind of go to the non-informants, O.C. Shorts, and some other really, Archie Rogers was on his own as well. So you have some good, talented people in the space in terms of non-informants,
right.
Which you're obviously not an informant. You're a podcaster, but you did this very early on. Like even pre-Rogan. So give me like why you first picked up a mic, how did you do it, and how did you even know to do a podcast? I don't think iTunes was even out at the time.
No, it wasn't. It sounds funny, but I go back to like when I was 10 years old with the wooden spoon, pretending to be Robin Leach, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Yeah,
my father had built me a tree fort, and I would sit outside all day long with a little cassette recorder taping myself talking, which is amazing because I had speech problems.
Yeah.
I was in speech therapy for the first 15 years of my life because of my cleft palate, which now I earn money talking.
Yeah. And now you have to build up the muscle and all kinds of stuff. Now it's like PT and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Correct. And I think I was doing a bunch of different things like minor filmmaking stuff.
Yeah.
And a buddy of mine had says, oh, we should just talk on microphones and then to amuse ourselves.
Yeah.
And I started doing that, and then I sort of moved to hockey because that's sort of my background.
And you played like semi-professional
for
hockey,
over a
right?
decade. Yeah.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So what I decided was I was looking for something to do, and I was sort of a mob genre nut.
Yeah.
I read books like everybody else, and a friend of mine said, due to your family background, okay, and being related to people, you should talk about that. And that went against everything I believed in because you just don't talk about these things.
Yeah.
But he says, but if you talk about the history,
correct.
Who cares? So I recorded one show, and it was a lot of that kind of thing. And I put it out. It was like overnight, 200-300 people. And I says, I think I got something here. But I tried to run from it.
But what medium was it on back then?
It was YouTube.
Oh, back then?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it took like...
What year was this?
2014.
Yeah.
2015.
That's early on in the YouTube.
It's in the days where it took 5 hours to upload like 20 minutes of footage.
Correct.
But I did it. And
that's like around like a little after Charlie bit me and it really hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
What year are you going?
But yeah, it was one of those things where I wasn't intelligent enough to look around and see what people were talking about, but I just said, you know what? My story is unique. I know a lot of stuff. Let's just see. And at the time, there was nobody. There was like old documentaries and stuff, like the A&E stuff that everybody sees, but nobody.
And how long did it take from being, and we'll get into the business end of what you're doing now, but how long did it take from being, hey, just a guy in a mic messing around to like, hey, I can monetize this and make a living?
Oh. Legitimately?
Yeah.
2019.
Wow. So you did it about part-time for 5 years, and then you got serious in 19.
Well, it was a scary move.
Of course.
Because I'm the only one in this genre that has a paid podcast, right? So I remember it was 2 years ago. I was sitting on the beach in Florida.
Yeah.
And I knew that coming back, I was going to launch the pay for it.
Yeah.
And I was afraid I was going to lose everything.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine says, just do it. You won't lose. You're good at what you do. You can talk about dogs doing.
And you converted a good amount over?
I think the first day we opened, it was like 100 people joined.
That's a lot.
And I was only charging $2.
Yeah.
Like,
Smart
which
move.
I was undercutting myself. Now we're at like 10. But
no, but you want to price yourself in, have a low back, because it's almost no offense, but it's almost like a nuisance fee.
Right.
Let's just say like, oh, you know what? For $2, I'll leave it alone. even if like I listen once a month, who gives a shit?
Well, even when you charge $10, people don't realize you're paying tax.
Yeah.
The company Stripe is taking their 10%.
Yeah,
so it's like it's not a get rich thing.
Correct.
But we went from like 100 to like 150 to like 250, and it was a slow move.
burn, yeah.
And it wasn't until the second year that I was operating like business wise that we like went over 2,000.
That's a lot, Jeff.
Yeah.
Now, was your like the business end, your monetization was like, hey, give me the $2 or $10, whatever it is.
Right.
You got that money. Did you look into merch? Did you have maybe have a premium content? Did you do consulting? Like, what did you monetize in other ways? Or if you didn't, why didn't you?
Pretty much, I was unsure about how to do it, right? So what I said to myself was, okay, I can go to a third-party company to do merch.
Yeah.
And, maybe I won't make as much. So you know what I did? I went out and bought a T-shirt press. And I designed all of my shirts myself, charged a fee.
Yeah.
And I did that for over a year.
Yeah.
And like I was doing anywhere between 50 to 100 shirts a week, which
that's a lot.
To be standing in your
that's
apartment.
A lot.
Yeah. So
did you have the press, the hot press?
Oh my God. You have no idea.
Like 10 minutes to make one shirt, right?
Yeah. And so what I did was in the complex I live in, I hired a guy who lived next door. You want to make $10 an hour? Just, and he screwed up everything. But
exactly.
But then I started looking at, okay, what am I paying for my shirts?
Yeah.
What is it costing me in ink? What's it costing me
in time? You're probably
only
making $10 a shirt anyway. You might as well outsource it to Teespring or whatever.
And that's exactly what I did. Yeah. And I only lost $2 off each shirt doing it that way. Yeah. And then I don't have to run to the mailbox.
Correct. And there's a lot of it's print on demand nowadays and drop shipping,
100%.
so you don't even keep
Print on
inventory.
demand.
So this is important. So I want to give some of the machinations. So you did some merch. Who use it? I think you're using Amazon for merch now, right?
Bonfire.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just would like to give specifics for the business end of people because people that want to do merch is Bonfire, there's Teespring. I like Printify for drop shipping. That's just me. That's who we use for our company. Okay, so you're doing some merch. You're building up an ecosystem. How was your retention? Like, did you ship 2,000? Keep everybody? Did you plateau? Did you go up? Did you go down?
And this is what happened, and it scared me. And I'll tell you what happened as a result. When I first started, I was very abrasive, very in your face, yeller, this kind of thing. And then slowly I started to change how I did things. Yeah. But I found that when I first started the podcast, I kind of got suckered to going back into that old character.
Yeah.
And I watched the steady decline, and I looked at emails of, we don't like the ranting, we don't like this, we don't like that. So I says, well, I got to change a little bit. So I backed off of that, and the numbers started going back up. But right now, I'm at like 3,500 right now.
You have 3,500 recurring.
Yeah.
Damn. At $10 each?
Yeah.
Shit, dinner on Jeff.
But people forget I pay tax and all of that.
Yeah, no, I got it. He's the guy with the ham under his arm and crying he has no bread.
It.
All right. So you're not as pressured as much for merch and other ancillary income streams per se. You're like just blocking and tackling on growing your subgroup.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if I could sell 10 shirts a month, okay. But it's not my bottom line. I mean, I have to. When you first start, you get 100 people, and you're like, oh, this is fantastic. I don't care if I don't ever get another guy again. Yeah. But then as the cost of living changes, now you're spending more business-wise.
Lifestyle inflation.
Right, of course. So if you watch it suddenly dip and you lose 60 people,
and you're still on the hook for the expenses.
Yeah, and you start saying to yourself, oh, shit, I better. But the problem is that the transfer from YouTube to that,
correct.
I would say that only 10% of my customer base comes from YouTube.
Yeah, I was going to say because, and we'll get into that, because it looks like you had a really kind of nice increase, on the radio side or the audio side, and you kind of have to be on YouTube now. You just have to be.
Yep.
So it's kind of like, what do I do? Do I take care of my group and give them their content? Then I want to recruit some new people. And then you do some lives and stuff, and then are you giving away too much content that it should be paying for? So there's always a balance, which I want to get to kind of the creator part of it. You find a way to give stories about things that I would not think to think about. Meaning, like, how many times can you hear about Carlo Gambino? How many times can you hear about Vito Genovese? But you kind of like go deeper, and you're like the pacer guy, in my opinion. How, like the court documents, the facts, that kind of stuff. What is your creative process? And if you can walk through that when you create content.
I think RJ said it best.
Yeah.
He said, if you look throughout history of organized crime, right,
Yeah.
you have the Jerry Capicis of the world, the George Anastasias,
Yeah.
and they have a very tiered,
Yeah.
this is an FBI narrative. He said, but Jeff, you're the only guy that has a narrative from the other side of the fence going at them. And that was different to me. So creatively, I tend to look at things like, okay, what are the facts?
Yeah.
What is plausible
Yeah.
and what's bullshit?
Yeah.
Because the gap is huge between
Correct.
what's real and what's
Correct.
fictitious. So for me, I always tend to look at things like, especially with 302s and surveillance reports. If I have a surveillance report from Dominic Montiglio and a 302, I look at that, and there's always more than one person that's talking, right? So if you cross-reference that, you start to see a pattern of the same information being said by 10 or 12
You
different people.
triangulate a little bit.
Then you know chances are this is probably on the mark. But creatively, I try to humanize them a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
Even though they do bad things.
Yeah.
I think if you humanize somebody and you give them something that they haven't really heard, or you can expound on the psychology of the criminality, that it touches people.
Yeah.
So they're not just getting Carlo Gambino was born in blah, 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 died in 77, 76, whatever. So I think from a creative aspect, you have to give them something different. And when I hear content creators say all the time, these guys, they all talk about the same bullshit every day.
Yeah.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
And people would know that about me if they listened.
Well, I heard
to
you
the
say
podcast.
it a few times. You're like,
Yeah.
you say this, just do me a favor. You even invite them. I'll give you access to the behind the firewall. Go there and then talk to me. And then a lot of them don't take you up on it.
Right. Right.
Okay. So in terms of positioning, if you weren't here and somebody said to me, he's like, what's Jeff's knowledge base, right? And I would answer in the following. You seem to know a lot about Philly. New York, I would put you second to none. And then you also know, and that's why I like talking to you, is you know a lot more about international than probably most, if not all, podcasters that are U.S. based. So I want to kind of unpack that a little bit. How do you know so much about Philly and what you're willing to share? And give us kind of like your thoughts on maybe Philly, Cosa Nostra versus maybe New York.
I think with Philadelphia, I don't know if I know as much as other people, but I think on a personal aspect, being friends with some people that have been accused of some stuff, you kind of get to know them on a personal level, so you know what person A is capable of.
Got it.
Right? You know out the gate.
So you can maybe give better color to it.
Right. So and I'll give you an example. So if there's a headline that this guy is determined to do X, Y, Z, and he did X, Y, Z. Well, I've sat and had dinner with the guy, and I can tell you certifiably he would never do anything like that.
So some of it's you get better sourcing, so that might be why you're able to give better content.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure. Being a student of the game, you learn a lot, right?
Yeah.
So you have books, you have articles, you have history, but when you know people, that now it's all encompassing.
Correct.
So now I have kind of the bearings on what's going on. But if you asked me what could happen tomorrow there, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So obviously the New York stuff, you have a good grasp of. Again, you're very fact based. What got you being kind of an American guy, if you will, kind of based out essentially out of New York, got you covering Ndrangheta, Cosa Nostra, and obviously Camorra. You're pretty knowledgeable. I mean, you did some really great stuff on that. Why did you gain an interest in that? And give me why it fascinates you.
It's the root.
Yeah.
It's the root of everything.
Yeah.
Right? And being half Italian, half Irish. So you always want to look back at the Sicilian Vespers.
Yeah.
How did this all begin? Like what made peasants uprise?
Yep.
And what made people who own land
Yep.
want to hire these men to defend their lands?
Yeah.
But the funny thing about all of that, because history teaches us, is they hire them, then they take it over.
Yeah.
And then they shake them down.
Correct.
So I was always curious about the history of it. And the root of it all is in Italy, right? And I think when you try to compare that to New York, they're two different
absolutely.
beasts.
Yeah.
But it also shows a log line of how it began, why it was there to begin with, the ebb and flow and the evolution of it. Yeah. And I think New York, the evolution has gone sort of sideways as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But I was always more intrigued by the methodology, the thinking, the philosophy behind people like Totorina, Provenzano, and some of these guys. Like, you have to marvel, even though it's abhorrent in many ways.
Correct.
They're also brilliant men.
Yeah, they did.
Very intelligent.
For their space.
Had they have chosen to go a legit route. Because this is the argument I always have with people is, well, they're demons. But many of these men, when they came over to this country, the Carlo Gambinos, they didn't have any money. They had a family to support. Now, that doesn't give you the reason to be able to go out and break laws. But think about the generations that never have to go through that.
Yes.
So also when talking about that, I find it intriguing that nobody ever talks about those who leave the life and do things good.
Correct.
You know, because
like Tommy Gambino,
Italians are very stereotyped.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but it always goes back to the foundation.
Yeah.
Because everything that we see now springs from something else.
Yeah.
And 20 years from now, it'll be something else entirely.
I asked you on one of your lives, and if you could kind of give your answer and even expand on it, if you will. In Italy, the Calabrians went from being kind of kidnappers to now probably the most powerful cartel in the world because they're the ones with the money.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. The Mexican cartel is probably more powerful for muscle, but when you're the customer, one paying for it, you could just take your money, go to Colombia or other places, Peru and Ecuador, which they are doing. Camorra seems to be holding tight, and Sicilian Cosa Nostra has been quiet, which is a good thing.
Right.
So why is it that you feel that triumvirate of organized crime, and you could even argue Canada to an extent, has risen over the years, where U.S.-based Cosa Nostra is, in my opinion, on its last legs? Why do you think that is?
RICO laws.
Yeah.
I think if the RICO law wasn't so punishable, triple the time, they could take everything you own, I think we might see a new variation of organized crime,
Good point.
Especially in New York.
Good point, yeah.
But because there is such a stiff penalty, I mean, let's just be honest with it. Okay, associating with, and you know this, associating with is a gangsterism charge.
Yeah, correct.
It's that way in Canada. It's that way in Europe.
Yeah.
Over there, Canada, they're going to get 8 to 10 on a murder.
Yeah.
Here, here, lights out, done, death penalty. So, and I think that's that, and you have to understand too is that even at the height of organized crime, let's talk Genoveses, okay, 250, 300, okay. You look at Ndrangheta, there's 150 clans with 200 to 300 members per clan.
Yeah, and they're related each within a clan.
All related. All related.
Yeah, good point.
Which is what old Sicilians wanted.
Correct.
The bigotry of like Genovese because of Calabrians. And, but Calabrians are now the strongest
by far,
entity in the world.
Well, Totorino had a little foresight because one of his groomsmen was a prominent Ndrangheta boss. And you'll appreciate this one. There was a beef between Totorina and Raffaele Catolo.
That is
the guy who started the NCO. It kind of died down because of jail and other stuff, but like that was one of the first times that a Camorra boss that was actually aligned with the NCO was an offshoot of the Camorra, but was more aligned to the Ndrangheta because he learned from the Ndrangheta guys from jail. He had a beef with Totorina, and it kind of petered out. But Totorina did have the foresight to realize the Calabrians are the ones that are going to hold the power.
Well, all three have merged now in Milan.
I heard about that.
Why
don't you talk about that a little bit? Because that's big news.
When you have all of the organized crime groups, right? It's all about turf. It's about territory, narcotics, whatever the case may be. But them coming together is a business move for money.
Correct.
But if you look at Ndrangheta, they control pharmacies. They control gasoline and where you get it.
Ports.
The big thing that I found is they control mortuaries.
I heard about that, yeah.
They have turf beef over which body goes where.
Yeah.
American Cosa Nostra should have schemed about that in the early days.
Correct.
And I think in terms of being shrewd, I think the days of the corner shakedowns are over in New York City.
Correct.
But it's still going on in Italy.
Yeah.
And
school lunch contracts are controlled by the Camorra and so forth.
Well, they were very slick, too, because when the government started buying, like, I don't want to say residential properties, but sort of low-income properties, mob was slick over there.
Correct.
They bought into these contracts. So they're owning real estate after real estate, government contracts, bridges. That is on New York.
Yeah.
Italy, two different scales.
So you're okay. Maybe Carlo Gambino didn't live long enough, but you're a mobster in the '80s. Let's call it. Let's go pre-commission, right? And maybe Castellan was trying to do this. When those guys sat down and said, "Guys, listen, like we want this thing to last another 400 years. We need to maybe do more white collar stuff. We need to maybe get more involved with regular like infantry industries." And control those industries and maybe, get out of drugs and that kind of stuff. What did the American Cosa Nostra do wrong specifically? And what was that inflection point where it just went downhill? or was it multiple inflection points?
Well, I think surveillance didn't help.
Okay.
I think a lot of people would point at narcotics.
Yeah.
But I don't really think
Yeah.
that's it. I think they almost overextended themselves.
Okay.
And I always use Philadelphia as a model
Yeah.
for this. Take, let's say, 100 guys.
Yeah.
They're operating in an area that's so small. South Jersey a little bit,
Yeah.
North Jersey,
Yeah.
forget it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Except for one crew in Newark, which was, small
Right.
numbers.
Then you've got 5 representations
Yeah.
surrounding you. How far can you really go?
Correct.
And I think with New York, construction
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
that's the biggest moneymaker.
Correct.
And if you can't control the unions, that's the big thing. If
Yeah.
you look at 1960s Frank
Yeah.
Costello,
Correct.
he controls the politicians who can control cops, who
Yep.
control unions, who control XYZ.
Doing like the fabric of
The minute that
society.
you lose political clout or power to
Yeah.
push a button,
Yeah.
it's done.
Yeah, because and we'll get into that in a little bit of philosophy in a minute, and you're not big on informants, but the informants that I kind of chatted with was kind of disappointing, and I'll give you a few quick examples. I would say, hey, who was your to ex-Lucchese guy? I'm like, hey, who was your kind of politicians you have on the hook? On the hook? Well, we really didn't have any. I'm like, you didn't have a councilman or I don't know, like a commissioner or something that kind of steered construction contracts your way. Not that I was aware of. I'm like, okay. And then I know you're not a big fan of him, probably Bobby Luisi. I said he was making some drug money. So I said, did you go to the Borgata to kind of get it washed? He goes, they didn't really have anybody. There's no banks they worked with or institutions, or maybe they didn't want to share with them. My point being is he was on his own. Here's my point. They lost that kind of institutional kind of like, oh, this is our guy or this is our bank, or almost like, to me, it's a franchise. I want to be with
Right.
you because you helped me.
Right.
So I think they kind of got away, at least in the U.S., where you were almost on your own. Why we were talking offline, where you see the disparity of like 10% of the earners are the big shots and the lower guys aren't making money because there's not that institutional kind of power. So my question to you is, and I actually want to, I ask a lot of people this that are in law enforcement or at least podcasters that aren't in the life. You see how Indragada and Camorra grew by actually getting into drugs. Should Cosa Nostra got into cocaine during a cocaine boom and said, you know what, we're going to take bigger pinches, we're going to get in a lot of trouble, but we're going to make a fuck ton of money. Did they mess up by not owning the cocaine trade, in your opinion, and giving it to the Mexicans?
I think so. I think so.
Okay.
Because they were strong enough back in the 60s and 50s to really put a blockade on Mexico.
And they had the infrastructure with the heroin pipeline.
I mean, if you think about it, Carlo Gambino, Santo Trafficante bought land in Venezuela, and there were airstrips.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if they were vacationing, but come on.
Yeah.
They were transporting
Yeah.
from Medellin and everywhere else. But maybe not so much. See, I think it's a whole big tiered thing. I think the acumen of those coming up behind.
Yeah. They just didn't have it.
And let me use this reference point.
Yeah.
If you're somebody that arrives in this country with nothing, you do whatever you have to do. You have a certain mentality.
Correct.
Explain to me how a guy who grows up in a $600,000 house with his family becomes a gangster.
Good point.
He doesn't. He becomes a rat.
Yeah.
And he does because everything's been given to him.
Yeah.
So it's if there's no struggle or there's no reason. Look at most of the guys in South Philly grew up poor.
Yeah.
Dirt poor. They wanted a way out. I'm not saying that's the correct way to do things.
Correct.
But I understand the mentality.
Yeah.
I don't understand the mentality of a guy who was given a BMW when he's 16 for graduating and starts shooting people.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because one of the answers I got was from an ex-cartel guy. This was not on the show. And he said to me that at the time, the Colombians obviously started importing first, right? You had Pablo Escobar in Miami, and you had the Cali cartel in New York, and I think LA was shared or open, or it might have been Pablo. But my point being is there were mob guys around, but they did their own thing. And I'm like, well, why didn't the mob just go to them and say, hey, we have a heroin pipeline, let's do business? At that point, the heroin pipeline was dismantled for the most part, at least nationally. And then the second part is the Colombians didn't really want to do business with the mob because those guys are tracked down by the FBI. They didn't need the headaches.
Right.
They'd rather deal with Dominicans, Haitians, and other ethnic groups because the Italians at that point were hexed.
Well, and I think that they all learned from the DeMeo situation.
Okay, expand on that. Because remember, this is not everybody's the mobologist. Yeah.
So when Chris Rosenberg,
Yes.
who went by Chris DeMeo,
Yes.
decided to rip off some Colombians.
Yeah. I think a Cuban drug dealer was
Cuban,
backed by
you're
a
right.
Colombian.
You're right. It was, he steals drugs,
Yeah.
then they kill him.
Yeah.
Okay. The response to that is anger, and the response to that is that they're going to send guys to New York and kill everybody.
Yep. And they got to Castellano.
Right. And what happens, what transpires, is an innocent kid selling a fucking vacuum gets killed.
Yeah.
And a blazing shootout from Brooklyn to Manhattan to Brooklyn or whatever the case.
Yeah.
And I think Castellano learned from that.
Yeah.
I think Castellano also learned that whatever power base he thought he had here didn't work in Italy.
Yeah.
Because Totorina told him what to do, not the reverse of that.
Correct.
So
That's correct.
when you look at the totality of organized crime in this
Yeah.
country, the downfall isn't, people say, surveillance,
Yeah.
stupid decisions. The downfall is the men you're recruiting in your ranks do not have the acumen.
Human capital.
They just don't have the acumen for it.
So you bring a good point because I look at the Chris Rosenberg story. Now, remember, he was an associate, right? He wasn't obviously a made guy. So he was technically allowed to deal in drugs, right? And he was on record, I believe, obviously with Roy DeMeo. So obviously he kind of went out of pocket. He killed the wrong guy. They said, we're going to come up, send a Sicario team. We're going to kill everybody till we find them. What I found a little troubling was, I believe Nino Gaggi went to Roy and said he's got to go, and he went, right, as per Paul Castellano. That's my understanding. But here's my point then. One, why were they so scared, right? Right? And I want you to answer that in a second. And then number two, if I'm an associate, isn't the whole point you're supposed to protect me?
Right.
So unpack that a little bit.
I think, by the way, it was 5-1 that you would see unpacked twice at least.
That's correct. We have an over-under, so we're going to... Yeah, that's right.
Cartels don't care.
Yeah.
Women, children don't care. If you screw them over... If they can't get you, your dog. Yeah. I mean, whatever. And I think that's the difference, the impunity at which they dispatch.
So Castellano didn't want the headache. He's like, you know what? Who's that? He probably didn't know who he was.
Well, it's going to bring heat.
Yeah.
It's going to bring massive amount of heat.
Correct.
What was your second part of that?
So the second part is then why be an associate if you're Chris Rosenberg that you can't kind of like it shouldn't be like I ripped the wrong guy off then I die. It should be unless the other guy's another member, you should get my back.
Because you're only as good as the last envelope you drop.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
How many times have you heard the story? When you go in that life, it's going to be 6 of your friends that do it to you.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. A happy captain is a captain that's getting a lot of money.
Correct.
Let that money start slowing up, and now the filtering into the street gossip, because that's a big thing in organized crime is street gossip.
Wash women.
He's going to start listening more and more to, this guy's a little loose, he's a little nuts.
Yeah.
Fuck him, kill him.
Interesting.
That's how it goes.
So how has kind of yourself as an historian, podcaster, and content creator, you kind of obviously you're fact-based and give some opinion because you're an opinionated guy. How has your coverage been when you notice maybe now versus 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago? What are you covering now, and how has a mob evolved, and how did your content evolve with that?
I think I went from just what was known, which is basically regurgitation, right, to there's a deeper story here, and the story can always be found in paperwork.
Yeah,
you've seen paperwork. Government weaves their story. You can choose whether to believe it or not. But it also shows you through transcripts of things they say on wiretaps what kind of animal they are and what kind of person they aren't, right? So I think the way it's changed for me is I almost get personal with it. It's like opening a door and saying, here's Carlo, who's just a character, but let me feed you a little stuff that nobody knows to humanize him a little bit. Yeah. But I think today it's still history. I just am more... I hate to say legalese, but I'm more of a legalese now. I like to look at what's reference point. If it's not illegal to be an organized crime,
correct?
Why is the government allowed to, and a grand jury indictment allowed to give them a weaving history of organized crime? If it's not illegal to be a Mason, to be a union member,
you just can't act on
because let's be honest, American juries are not smart. Okay, and the only thing that an American jury would know about that life is The Godfather,
Yeah.
Goodfellas,
Correct.
Scarface.
Yeah.
So they're already walking in predisposed to what they. And listen, the mafia exists.
Yeah.
I'm not going to,
Yeah.
But if you're already predisposed to that,
Then it taints the jury.
then what the hell bring it up for? They already know anyway.
Correct.
And if you think that they're not going home at night on YouTube and looking up Joey Merlino,
Joey sausages.
whoever,
Yeah.
come on.
Now, you bring a good point of, jury bias, that kind of stuff. Because, think about you're a juror, right? And then all of a sudden, it's an Italian name. And then you have an overzealous prosecutor. And you kind of have that. If you could maybe recollect independently any situations where maybe, and it could be like, a mobster, and it could have been a bad dude, but maybe got a bad break. Any cases offhand, or maybe actual cases that maybe a guy got wrongly convicted, not because he was a bad guy, but wrongly convicted of what he was convicted of?
Peter Limone got the death penalty at one point because of
Peter Limone, is it?
New England,
Okay,
Providence.
okay.
Because of Frank the Animal Barboza.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Turns out the FBI knew Barboza was lying, did nothing to stop it because they literally said in FBI memos to J. Edgar Hoover, the ends justify the means.
Wow.
2 guys got the death penalty. They got the death penalty. Now, it got overturned,
Okay.
but they'd already spent 20 years in prison.
And Barbosa got killed by Patrick.
Patriarchus. They say it was Jared Russo, but
Yeah.
it wasn't. But
Interesting.
that's the whole point, is the FBI knew, but they withheld discovery materials. And I've been going through this on my podcast, and it's not just, like, for instance, they knew on wiretaps Patriarcha gave the go-ahead to get rid of somebody.
Yeah.
Why do they not indict him? You can't not pick and choose what's
Yeah.
indictable.
Yeah.
Phil Narducci.
Okay.
Great friend of mine, loved
Yeah.
the guy to death. Phil Narducci did his time,
Yeah.
got out. There was an informant who was a member of Hezbollah,
I heard about
a
that.
known terrorist who was going around town borrowing money from everybody, okay? This guy went to Phil, who had a legitimate tax-paying
Yeah.
lending company.
Yeah.
Him and his wife had one.
Yeah.
He comes, he borrows money, he gives him the story. Oh, my mother's got stomach cancer, she's dying. So they do him a favor.
Yeah.
He stops paying. Phil gets mad and says, why are you disrespecting my wife? We went out of our way. As soon as he finds out who Phil is, he
runs
tells
to
the feds.
Interesting.
And so it goes from that to, like, this is a guy who did 30 years. Another pinch for extortion and racketeering.
That's crazy.
Lights out for him.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And I did what I did.
Yeah.
Which is out the informant, because that's what you do to protect your friends. Because the government wasn't going to, the judge in that case was not going to allow that.
Did you get flack
information.
for that legally, publicly?
Yeah,
privately?
the FBI came to my house with a search and seizure warrant.
Are you serious?
Yeah. 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 And then I was mentioned in 2 other indictments after that. What basically happened was I found out through somebody else, and I got the hard information.
Yeah.
Who I got that from doesn't matter, but it wasn't Phil. I did not know that if it's sealed, you cannot legally show that. So when I contacted the Philly Inquirer, the Boston Globe, and went crazy and started showing it, I figured, this is great.
But did you know it was sealed? Or you may not
Yeah, but I
answer
didn't know what the legal ramifications were.
Got it.
Because if I'd have called my lawyer and said, listen, he would have told me, don't do that.
Yeah.
You're going to end up in big trouble.
Yeah.
So I did it. And when the government, John Hahn was his name, the U.S. attorney, fucking wanted me in prison.
Wow.
Wanted me strung up because I ruined their case.
But you didn't. So you knew an informant was part of a terrorist organization. You're not a law enforcement guy. You're media. You kind of out that as part of your First Amendment. You're not. I mean, unless you are specifically advised by law enforcement to say, "Hey, don't say anything," you're not really bound.
I think I made them look bad because he was here on an expired visa. Wasn't even supposed to be in this country. He was trying to shake down other people. He was a degenerate gambler.
Wow.
He was selling himself
Yeah.
for money, whatever the case may be.
crazy.
But what ended up happening is they find out that, of course, I've done this, and the judge in that case was not going to allow them to present the fact that he was a terrorist who was sentenced to death in Lebanon.
And they left that out of the trial?
The judge says you can't bring that up. It's prejudicial. How the fuck is that prejudicial? You're going to put a guy in prison, but there's so I did that, and it's hilarious. I'm sitting here. I think it's on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
And I get a phone call from a strange number, and all I hear is, get your bags, get the fuck out of New York. I don't care where you go.
Jesus.
Get rid of anything. And I would have gotten rid of all my communications anyway, just because of the people I talked to.
Yeah.
So I went and I hit out here in Jersey for like a week and got a couple calls during the time. He's like, you do what I told you. Everything's fine. And they showed up and they couldn't get anything because there was nothing there.
That's crazy. So, okay. So,
Yeah. So then when the second indictment just recently dropped in Philly, clear cut in that indictment was, please seal this because we do not want friends or associates of this organized crime family putting it out. But I already knew anyway. Yeah. So I did it again.
So talking about kind of the space, in 19, you're cruising, you got, nice subscriptions, things are going well for you.
Yeah.
Then the market kind of pops, right, in 20. So people are home, you had an influx of folks. So you as a podcaster, right, because that's your forte, if you will, or content creator, saw a rise of ex-guys in the life, most of which are informants. Obviously, otherwise they wouldn't be on YouTube. Yeah. And you have a disdain for them. I want to give you the platform in that because I people watching this know I've had many informants on. This show has to be fair balance. People need to give their different sides of each story. Give me kind of why do you have a disdain for informants in your opinion?
I don't disdain them. I downright fucking hate them.
I was trying to be nice.
That's okay. But see, this is why I can say it. You'd be like, well, that guy Jeff's crazy. He's on medication. I have a disdain for them because no man should ever go to prison on the words of another man, number one. Number two, in 90% of the cases you look at, the informant has done more vile and disturbing crap than those that are being accused. Number three, I find it oxymoronic when a man, Joey Merlino, because everybody knows who he is. Yeah. He goes in front of a judge. They can bring up everything he's ever been accused of, including murders and whatever else. Even though he's acquitted, doesn't really matter because it's a character judgment. But yet in that same case, you can't turn that around and say, well, let's judge the rat. Judges don't allow that. So for me, it's like you're walking in, you're already behind the eight ball. Okay. The other thing is I have family members that were involved in organized crime that went to prison because of rats. I got in trouble because I was informed on in my case. Okay. No matter what anybody wants to tell you, that's the thing. Yeah. So my thing is if I did it, hand to God. Yeah. I pled guilty because I knew I did it. Okay. But if somebody hasn't done something or they try to distort the reality, they tried to charge Sonny Mazzone with meth, selling meth, all because he leaves the house. This is funny. You'll love this. They were watching them. He leaves the house. It's late at night. This is the story he told me. And it was dark in his house. He wasn't paying attention. He puts on 2 different colored shoes. And he goes running down the block to talk to somebody. And he says, I can't do math. I can't do math because it was something about some money or whatever. The FBI hears that and then tries to charge him with selling meth.
Versus the word meth?
Meth. They distorted math.
M-A-T-H versus M-E-T-H.
Yeah, and because he was wearing 2 different colored shoes, they thought he was on something.
Yikes. Interesting.
And let me tell you something. Yeah. The only reason why he went to jail is because the guy that brought the rat there made a mistake. Sonny was loan sharking. Yeah. He'll be the first to tell you he was. Guy comes in to pay. He has a rat with him, wired up. They don't know it. Wow. He says, this is the money for your brother, Stevie. Oh, it had nothing to do with Stevie. Wow. It was Sonny's loan. Wow. Stevie went to jail
for that
because of that for 7 years.
Nuts of your life. 7 years of your life.
And then they want to play some stupid wiretaps of nobody's going to glom our shit in Atlantic City. Let's come on.
That was a weak. You broke that, and that was a weak indictment, which I think most guys pled out, and nothing's. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like as a civilian, I can't spend more than a day in jail, but guys got lighter sentences for that life. Do you agree that a lot of them were right to plead out and just do the 3 to 5 years, or do you think they should have risked it even though they may blow a trial?
So here's the problem. Yeah. Okay. Let's. I'm trying to think of somebody. It doesn't matter. The problem is that in a Fed RICO case, right? You're going to pay $250, $275K for a
Easily,
lawyer,
yeah.
hoping to God,
Yeah.
at the bare minimum, you get a mistrial.
Correct. And then you pay trial tax. If the guidelines are 36 months, it might give you 360
Right.
because you try to go to trial.
But the biggest problem with that is if you get a mistrial and the government has a hard-on for you,
Yeah,
they can
maybe.
bring you back again and again and again, and another 250, another 275.
Jeez.
So if they can't get that conviction, then they'll bankrupt the fuck out of you.
paper.
And if they can't do that to you,
Yeah.
then they'll force you to plead. 85% of all federal cases are now plea deals
Wow, that's crazy.
because you cannot fight a blank check.
And that goes against their positively, they get the credit for the 95% conviction rate or whatever it is. So they become judges, lawyers, senators, private civilians.
Right. And a lot of the reasons for why, because I remember when Phil went away, he goes, please explain to me why I'm taking a plea. It doesn't mean I did it,
Yeah.
but what choice do I have?
Yeah.
That's what people
Don't understand.
people don't grasp that.
Yeah, it's not about whether you did it or not. It's whether they can prove it.
Right. Right.
Or think they can prove it.
I have a friend who always says, I am who I am. Let them fucking come prove it. Now, that may be sort of a braggadocio type of way of looking at it, but that's his viewpoint.
That's where he does it.
The problem is, you put 10 guys in a room that all say you did that. How do you defend that? My lawyer used to call that a deathbed confession.
Yeah.
He said, it doesn't matter if you're a saint. If there's 3 other people
There's
that are
other
pointing
people
at
that
you,
are gonna-
you're done.
So, okay. So we kind of touched over a few different things and things that I wanted to cover. But who are you as, the guy? I know, like, you respectfully, you had good upbringing, but you also some challenges we kind of talked a little bit about, or at least alluded to in the text. What are some things that maybe you'd like to share, you're open sharing, of some of the challenges you have, and more importantly, how did you overcome them?
I don't know if you ever overcome them.
Okay.
You find a way. After my sister died,
Okay.
my mother was never the same.
Naturally, yeah.
She became very emotionally abusive,
Yeah.
physically abusive,
okay.
to the point where even at 10 years old, I wanted to hang myself because I didn't understand what I did wrong. And anytime that happens and you're going to elementary school with bruises or whatever
Yeah.
the case may be, they always want to talk to you and find out. And they thought that I was learning disabled, but I wasn't. It was a matter of
I was scared.
I stopped bringing books home in the 4th grade because I learned differently.
Yeah.
So I found out not until college age how I learned best, and that's reading it. I would come home and I wouldn't understand long division, or I'd get frustrated. It wasn't, okay, let's take it. It was punch me in the face, spit on me,
Holy cow.
slap me, call me stupid, call me a faggot, call me worthless, call me this. And I wasn't the only one.
Wow.
But my brothers were so much older than me.
Yeah.
They go to college. They get the fuck away from
So you
me.
got the brunt of it.
I got everything. My father had an affair.
Okay.
I took the brunt of what my father did. Now, people will say, well, what kind of man was your father? He didn't take you out of that. He was terrified of my uncles.
Okay.
That is why.
Interesting.
Okay. And there was an incident where she had thrown a plate one night and knocked out all my teeth on the left-hand side,
cow.
and he beat the daylights out of her.
Wow.
And my father was not a violent guy, but he beat the daylights out of her because she hurt me.
Wow.
And then eventually, there was a time in school where I told a friend I was going to kill myself. Legit was going to do it. I couldn't live with being called names, being beat on. And they call the police. And my father hears this and rips me right out of the house. Says, "This enough of this shit." So when you come from, I love my mother, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Do I like her? No. Do I forgive that shit? No.
She's still alive?
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I say that with all due respect. People are going to say, oh, how could he say that about his mother? But she once had a heart attack, Tom, right in front of me. And I hesitated for 4 minutes
Wow, that's crazy.
because I said, the monster's going to go. And then it kicks in. This is your mother. What are you doing? And the call saves her life.
So your father eventually took you in? They took you back in?
Yeah.
Thank God.
My father was, she used to beat on him. Night of their honeymoon. Okay, they're living in the Keys. He was stationed in the Keys. They got married in Providence. He says, hey, hon, can you iron a shirt for me tonight? She was not going to have it, so she cracked him over the head with an aerosol and busted his head wide open.
Yikes.
And he always used to tell me, he says, do you know what it's like, son, to be, because he was trying to explain stepping out.
Yeah, of course.
And it wasn't until I was older that I got it. He goes, do you know what it's like every day to feel worthless? I said, well, yeah.
And your father passed, or?
Yeah.
Okay, how long ago?
2004.
Okay, sorry to hear that.
And that's where the story kind of deviates.
You're still pretty young.
62.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So coming from not having self-esteem, coming from never being good enough, I could bring home straight A's.
Yeah. And
Tom, it wouldn't matter. I'd catch a beating.
So you are obviously going to be somewhat guarded, obviously, right? And I know in this space you had some battles. We're not going to give anybody any daylight, but in general you had some battles. Do you think it might, not to get to like Dr. Phil, but do you think it might be, hey, you don't take a lot of crap or take very little crap, because by taking crap it might
100% that's what it is.
Okay.
It's not that I'm like some roaming tough guy.
Yeah.
I have zero threshold for people who abuse other people because I know what that's like.
Correct, yeah.
And I think it's a lightning rod for me.
Yeah.
You won't say that to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure to people on the outside, they think, man, he's crazy. They don't understand.
Yeah.
And one thing I do on my podcast that a lot of people don't know is I talk about this.
Yeah.
And I tell people it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to have the house, the white picket fence, the 2 kids and the dog. Live how you want to live, because parents will put expectations on you.
That you should have to
See, for my mother, it was all about how she looked.
Yeah.
Like I could recount time after time after time. Like after I got arrested and all of this stuff happened, she goes, "Oh, the felon's here." Like this is like, she would say stuff to girlfriends. "Oh, we always thought he was gay." Like just to be a bitch.
Wow.
And that is what I'll never forget. At 10 years old, I was put in front of a judge. I got in big trouble when I was 10. This is when the acting out started.
Yeah.
And a judge looked at me and says, "Young man, you're going to end up in prison the rest of your life." And I said, "Good, because then somebody can't hurt me."
Wow.
But I'm glad that wasn't true.
Yeah.
Because I made a conscious choice that, and you notice I don't say moral choice.
Yeah.
Okay. But I make the conscious choice of, do I want to be able to put my head on the pillow at night and just be worried about normal stuff, or do I want to be sweating it out?
Yeah.
Because during my criminal trial, I sweated it out every night for 2 years.
Yeah.
Freaked out. So that sort of progressed into why I am who I am.
Yeah.
I've been beat up plenty of times in my life. Who hasn't?
Yeah.
But if you come at me like that,
You're biting back.
Beyond. Like,
Got it.
I won't do what's fair, right?
Yeah.
But when my father died, I died.
Yeah.
A large part of me went, and I ended up homeless.
Wow.
Had nowhere to go. Things were tough.
Wow, that's crazy.
I went from 180 pounds to 120.
Holy cow.
And, drugs was never my thing. Alcohol was never my thing. And I can remember, I remember buying a gun.
Yeah.
Brand new. Put it to my head, pulled the trigger. Didn't go off.
I was loaded?
Yeah, didn't go
Holy
off.
cow.
Right? Put it out the window, pop, 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 goes off. Put it back to my head, doesn't work.
That might have been your father helping.
100%. 100%. So when you don't feel like you're worth a grain of salt, and then you try to do something like this, and you have these bastards who know nothing about you, your past, or what you've been through.
Yeah.
I'm a tough individual, because this would have killed. I came to New York City, Tom,
Yeah.
with $100 in my pocket.
Wow.
Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. And look at where I'm at now.
Wow, yeah.
And that's one reason why I love Angel Gotti.
Yeah.
Because when I had nothing,
She helped you out.
she said, "Do you need anything?" No, because I never asked for nothing. But she made sure I had money to eat, especially on Thanksgiving. She said, "I know it sucks being alone, but please go somewhere."
Fantastic.
So even if her and I butt heads, that I'll never forget. And that name saved me in a lot of different situations. So the way that I sort of typically look at things is like, doesn't matter what anybody thinks of me, doesn't matter how tough I say I am, it's growth.
Yeah.
And am I still that guy that doubts everything he does? Of course.
No,
and that filters into relationships in ways that people don't imagine. So I love my mother.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's how much is enough?
Yeah.
And her and I once had a conversation, Tom. She looked at me, she says, I did the best I could. Best you could is smacking the shit out of me, leaving me bruised and battered. And listen, I could take a physical beating like the best of them. It's the emotional.
If you don't mind me asking
Sure.
this, sometimes when there's like obviously trauma brought into your adulthood or adult trauma as well, very often you look to kind of reconcile with that person in some way. Hey, you know, I'll never forgive you. I'll never forget it. But just like help me understand a little bit and try to like kind of wrap it up a little bit or reconcile a little bit. Do you even want to do that with her
No.
if she's willing to? Okay.
No, I mean, what are you going to say?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do I relive it every day? No. But I'm also not going to put myself in a toxic situation.
Yeah.
I can love from afar.
Yeah.
But my siblings, who didn't have the best go of it either,
Yeah.
want to put a window dressing of, oh, she's old now. And no.
Yeah.
You can put a silk head on a pig. It's still a fucking pig.
Yeah.
And I don't care. Just because you weren't there doesn't mean it didn't happen to me.
Correct.
And the acting out and the bad stuff I did was direct. Granted, it's a choice.
Yeah.
We make a choice.
Yeah.
But it's a direct correlation to what happened to
Yeah.
me. And they instead want to play the whole game of, well, you decided to become a gangster. You wanted to do this. But you don't understand the ramifications of that.
Yeah.
And they're more fucked up than me. The difference is I went and got help for it.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to understand you can't unfuck yourself. But
Would
what
you
you
go through years of therapy?
of course.
Yeah.
You have to, because if not, Tom, I'd have killed somebody.
Yeah, yeah.
Straight up.
Yeah.
Straight up, I'd have killed somebody.
Good for you.
You know,
for you.
you have to figure out, you can't unfuck yourself, right?
Yeah.
But what you have to figure out is how you can just accept yourself as being flawed.
Yeah.
I know I'm a good guy,
Yeah.
but I don't react well to people who want to.
Yeah. Which is a lot of this in this space.
Yeah.
I often say as my day job as a marketer, and as an expression, pioneers get slaughtered, settlers prosper. And you've been a pioneer in this space. And there's a lot of people kind of prospering around you that started.
They all ripped me off.
That
You kidding
started
me? Come on.
after you started. What do you do to kind of keep your edge, and what do you do to kind of stay ahead of the curve?
I just keep doing my thing.
Okay.
I think people ask me all the time, oh, what's your favorite mob content you watch? I don't watch it.
Yeah.
Because this way I can honestly say, oh, I didn't get that idea from here, here, and
Good
here,
point.
right? That's number one. Number two, 85% of it's all nonsense, not true.
Yeah.
And based in drama and numbers
Yeah.
and views.
Yeah.
Me personally, I would rather have somebody say that was the best show. It's helped me
Yeah.
through whatever,
Yeah.
or I got great entertainment versus seeing 1,000 clicks.
Now, how do you, and I think you're doing a better job of this now, and I'll give an example in a minute, but how do you protect your IP? How do you protect from copyrights, copycats, and that kind of stuff? Are you something you more address head on? Is something more you leave alone? How do you kind of work around that?
I used to fight that with an
Yeah.
attorney.
Yeah.
Now I don't do anything.
Yeah.
Because I don't want their money.
Yeah.
Right? That's number one. Number two, most of these people just, some aren't even afraid by an attorney letter.
Yeah.
It's flattering in a sense because if you look at, and I'm no names, but
Yeah.
if you look at what I did 2017
Yeah.
and look at what came out during the pandemic, every single fucking one of them stole what I do.
Wow.
They all want to be the brash, in your face,
Yeah,
attack
yeah,
the
yeah,
rats.
yeah.
But the reality for me is people know who I am.
Yeah.
I think where the frustration part is
Yeah.
that like when you do a video that is top to bottom the
Yeah.
truth, and you see somebody take the same sort of format or idea and they say stuff that's like not even accurate, and
Yeah.
you see the people that are following them don't even call them out.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, now where do I stand? Am I just like old news now?
Yeah. Good
You know,
point.
and people will tell you, oh, you do the best, you do
Yeah.
all the facts, but it's like I'm getting inundated and attacked nonstop.
Yeah.
But I'm not seeing any of these people being called out for saying that Phyllis McGuire is Carlo Gambino's daughter and Sam Giancana was his son. That's how stupid this shit is.
Yeah.
You know?
And then you go back and forth. I know, and you could probably agree. I think the pendulum is starting to swing the other way, where there were some people. If you really look at certain channels, some don't post anymore. I don't want to call any particular channels because they may be not posting for particular reasons. And then like others seem to be not doing as well. Some are leaving the genre. Some are getting demonetized for allegedly, buying subs and stuff. Would you think the pendulum is going to still continue kind of the other way, or there's going to be a storm for a while that you plan on weathering? What do you think?
I think we went from long form, right?
Yeah.
To all these new people who just wanted to fight, and argue, and do mob content. Then you see the short form. Like there's one person in particular who's doing a lot of short form. Yeah. And that's how his channel's growing. Yeah. But I think if he was just doing long form, he's nowhere near 17,000, 18,000 subs. He wouldn't be.
Whatever that is,
But I think it's going to swing back where short form draws you in. Yeah. Problem that I have, the problem that I face.
I like your short form, by the way, but
Well, I enjoy long form because and I'll send you like free episodes of my podcast just so you can listen to it. But I talk about the abuse. I talk about emotional stuff because you got to give something of yourself.
Absolutely.
I can't tell you how many bills I've paid. Yeah. How many people have had cancer that I call. Like it just, you don't need to, I don't like telling people any of that stuff. But this theory of nobody ever gives back is bullshit.
Correct.
But as far as like long form, because I'm on a paid format, I sort of get lost in the shuffle. Yeah. Because they see the shorts, they see the lives, and they're like, oh, this guy does some really cool stuff. Yeah. But you're only going to get, like, if you have 18,000 subs, if you're lucky, you'll get 10% of that, which who am I kidding, to join a paid podcast.
Hell no.
More like 2%.
Hell no, 2%. Yeah, if
okay?
you're lucky.
That's why when these people talk
and 1/3 of those will drop
right.
off. Yeah.
Now you look at a live. Yeah. Can you imagine tomorrow if I had all of a sudden 18,000 people in my life, they'd say I bought subs. Yeah. Because reality is, even people that I notice that have 1 million subs, they'll probably have 1,000 people.
Yeah. But it's a very low number. Yeah.
But anybody between 7 to 20,000 is only going to get 200-300. But it
also goes by, and we kind of talk about this in industry, is audience training. What I mean is, there's some guys that do a live or two a day. Right. Their audience is trained to know, hey, there's a live at 2, live at 5, live at 7. Right. So they're trained, right? Versus your crew are like the audio guys, the guy who's maybe working or driving and listening to your paid pod. So you're now starting to do lives because you want to keep current, you want to connect with your crew. How's that been going for you?
I think last 30 days, 700 subs.
Oh, it's not bad. Okay.
My retention time usually hovers between 12 and 25 minutes, which is insane for what I do. My demographic is changing. The problem is that on a live, it's for me, I'm so good at, here's my files. This is what I'm going to talk about today. Yeah. You put me in front of a camera, I get distracted by the chat. I get distracted by this. Yeah. Somebody could set me off in the chat.
You want to cover your time, so maybe get some one episode to make some super chats, other ones you
right. And I found that the trick is if it's something I'm really serious about talking about, like prisoner reform, I'll pre-record a 20-minute video and I'll be in the chat talking.
And how does that do? So give me like the MTR Premiere versus the MTR Live, not the first day, but 30 days out. What's the difference in the two?
I don't do well at premieres.
Okay.
I'll get
your premiere's like an odd thing.
40 people watching.
And what about 30 days out? Does your premieres do a little better than your?
I think myself and a lot of people that strictly do the genre, we're going to max out at like 1,700 to 2,300 views total.
Yeah.
Now, prior to COVID, I was doing 5,000 a video, guaranteed.
So you had people kind of stealing market share.
Yeah. Now there's more for them to eat. Yeah. It's like a menu. If a menu only has chicken or veal, oh wait, now there's pasta.
But what's crazy is it's not necessarily the content has gotten better. It's just people get distracted and there's a lot going on. Are you exploring other platforms? Like Rumble?
No. What my goal would be is something like this, where I show up, I do my thing, and I go home. Yeah. Because to me, you got to remember, there's so many people in this industry that, and this is not about you, but just other people. Fun. They'll have co-hosts. Yeah. That's one half of the work that needs to be done. Yeah. Then they've got the other half doing their shorts, their whatever. Yeah. I'm a one-man
You're a one-man
production
show? Yeah.
studio.
I mean, I had a co-host.
You
Do
know?
I prefer co-hosts or not? I like this. I'm so happy to do in person. I'm so happy to be sitting across from you, looking the white of your
Right.
eyes. So that I like. But to be completely by yourself is not easy. And people don't understand this is a business.
Yeah, I mean, so my week begins, I take Mondays off.
Yeah,
you know?
good for you.
So Tuesday through Sunday, I will work. And it's always the same thing I do 3.5-hour podcasts on my own. This, not like 15 minutes, 3 hours to 3.5 hours. And I cut music into it and all of that. But that's 50 to 60 hours of working because you have to make sure what you're saying is right.
You do one episode per day?
I do 5 a month.
That's a lot. Okay.
So you figure just the Gambino series I did alone was 64 hours. The Kennedys was 76 hours. Because to me, if I'm paying for something, number one, okay, I want to feel like I'm getting value.
Good point.
Number two, the other thing is I treat them like their family. If they say, oh, my father's sick, give me his phone number.
Yeah.
I'll call him. Or give me his email. I can't tell you how many people's parents in their 80s would listen to the guy from New York who swears.
Yeah.
And they love it.
How do you handle the mix of, hey, I'm going to do a podcast like a Kennedy Gambino, like an evergreen that's going to live forever, versus, hey, you know what, I got to kind of cover some of the trends, like the recent Gambino bust, because I got to stay relevant. How do you manage evergreen versus...
That's where I fail.
Yeah. Okay.
Because if I say history,
Yeah.
and this is the caveat for me,
Yeah.
I will not cover a current topic unless it's a court case and I have
Documents
the
in front of
indictment,
you.
and
Yeah.
then I can do it because objectively,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about any. Listen, if I wanted to talk about current shit,
Oh,
are
I
you
know.
kidding me?
Yeah.
But I've always tried to maintain, if it's a criminal case that has court paperwork or it's a historical event, all day long.
Yeah.
And so I sort of catty corner myself that way
I don't
because,
think that's a bad thing, though.
well, it is in terms of mass appeal, I think.
Yeah.
But then again, this genre is so flighty and so wonky and so
worry
weird
about
to
that.
begin with that I know why people listen to RJ.
Yeah.
He's highly intelligent.
Yeah.
They may not like who he does it with, but hey,
Yeah.
it's working for him.
And they have a good dynamic.
Right. What I don't like
Yeah.
is the people that are very egotistical.
Yeah.
Like, I screw up and make mistakes. Am I the best at what I do?
Hold on.
Absolutely
You
not.
gave me, so you created awards,
Yeah.
and you hated me, which I
What did I title?
You gave me like the most self-inflated ego award or something along those lines.
Was that it?
Yes, or full of it award or something like like basically the most full of themselves award.
You know
or
what I
something
think it
along those
was?
lines.
If I can be
I mean, you used
honest,
to hate me.
it wasn't hate. If I hated
Yeah,
you,
that's
believe
true.
me, I think it was. I didn't know you.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to try not to get to know people
Yeah.
before I blast.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand where you were coming from.
Yeah.
And then the people I saw you with, I'm like, oh, hell no.
Oh yeah.
But now that I think I'm more accepting
Yeah.
because
I appreciate that.
now I'm business related,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
I get it. Like,
Maybe more frequencies match a little better now than before.
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I understand you're not malicious.
Yeah.
And then once I saw you getting attacked, I said,
Yeah.
okay,
Oh,
that's
I
a
got
little
of-
different.
yeah.
You know, like I may
Yeah.
not enjoy somebody,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's
Well, you know what it is. So I come off a certain way, and it's not. So I'm just trying to be me, right? I was a kid that my father left when I was 2. I always wanted to work, so my mother didn't have to
right.
support me. She was a single mom and worked in the cafeteria worker, didn't even speak English well. So I was always kind of like independent in that sense, but I had a lot of support from my family. But I was a kid who read like the Wall Street Journal versus Marvel Comics. I always wanted to succeed in business, not just because I'm competitive, it's because I just wanted to have financial freedom. And this is the way I am. I'm a regular guy. I'm a family guy. I get 4 kids. I have a lot of responsibility, along with 4 cats. And I guess I'm like, I try not to, how do I say this? I take the pride in the fact that if you hung out with me for a week, you would probably have a touch point of like politicians and state legislator to like plastic surgeons and lawyers to like a cousin who like is just like left a halfway house. You know what I mean? Like,
No, I get
like
it.
I
get
you know,
it.
and that's to me part of the Italian experience. That being in an Italian family, you have people that ventured from different parts of life, and I treat those people all the same.
Right.
And I get, and I do some self reflection too, where I always say, believe it or not, when I get a troll or I get a comment, I put into one of three categories. I say, one, are they saying, is it true? Hey, are they maybe right? Two, is there some semblance of truth? They're just being jerks. Or three, are they just assholes and they're just looking to stir the pot? 90% of it is a third column, but I try to listen. I do notice though that you don't have comments off. You keep comments off of your posts, and now I understand a little better why, because you don't want to deal with nonsense. But you're a good debater and you're not afraid of a fight. So why have your comments off? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I've turned them on for a lot of things.
On your shorts, you do.
Right. And some of my lives, I think they're on, but almost as soon as I turned them on, there's photos of
Oh, Jesus.
my
Nonsense.
family's homes.
Got it. Okay.
What's the address?
Yeah.
And at what point, and I just want to clarify.
Yeah, please.
I don't have to take that abuse.
Agreed.
Like, I don't come to work and slap the dick out of their mouth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I give them an opportunity
Yeah.
to come on my live. If you'd like to say something to me, here's
Just
a link.
jump on.
Please come do it. Show your face and tell me your real name.
Yeah.
They don't.
Yeah, I got a lot of stuff for like, so I obviously use my real name. I'm very open about Google who I am. My address comes up, everything comes up. I got in threats before. I had the FBI call me. I had a lot of situations that I'd rather not talk about. But my point being is I kind of get it now. You know, I kind of get it where I wish sometimes I had a moniker, maybe had a little bit more distance from maybe who I am as a person.
Wouldn't matter.
versus-
They'd still find out
Well,
who you
good,
are.
yeah, exactly. But you know, I'm like a huge fan of your show. So why don't you? Obviously, we're going to put the links below. I'll get a link to your paid platform because I want to drive people there. We'll put a link to your YouTube platform. But give us a little bit of the future. What should we expect content-wise from you, and how can people find you, Jeff?
They can search. We have a page on Facebook. Just type in Mob Talk Radio.
Awesome.
Boom. YouTube,
You have
Mob
like
Talk
a
Radio.
community page type thing, or
Yeah, it's over 5,000 followers.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which, you know, anyway. YouTube, you could search for us. As far as what the future holds, I'm not sure.
yeah,
I'm not sure what the longevity is anymore.
good point.
You know, as a business thinker, it's what's the next thing?
Yeah.
Have I stereotyped myself too much?
Yeah,
So the next thing for us is going to be on location.
I love that. By the way.
And it'll basically, that prick, Joey,
Yeah,
I had it all set up the way we're going to do it. I start seeing what he's doing, and I'm like, well, now I can't do it because the minute they see me doing it, what does it become? Oh, he's copying Joey's formula and his format. So it'll basically be on location, Jersey,
Yeah.
Philly, Florida,
Yeah, a ton of places
Chicago,
to show,
wherever.
yeah.
It'll be a bit history,
Yeah.
a bit me,
yeah,
and food.
I love it.
Italian culture, because
love
our
it.
culture is being
Yeah,
vaporized.
I think. Oh God, there's a whole nother episode. I think if you went around and even just did like highlighted like really strong red sauce joints,
Right.
Like I don't know if you know Belmont Tavern in Bloomfield, Nancy's Town home in Rollway. Those places are dying out, and those people need the coverage and deserve the coverage. Not that they're not busy; they're busy because they're kind of sticky nowadays. But the food's good old fashioned food, and they deserve to be highlighted.
Problem is, though, right? You get me walking in and saying, and they say, well, what do you do?
Yeah.
The minute I utter,
Yeah, I had a weird interaction one day. So some people wonder, like, well, you got New Theory, you got this whole Mobsters Inc. It's going to live on New Theory because I want more people to see this. But you have a lot of like things going on. Why did you separate the two and what's going on?
Right.
So I kind of talked about the story. I think maybe once on air, but I want to share it with you because I trust you. To trust your opinion on things. There was one day where I had a show with an informant, and it was kind of dying down, and I got like a really nasty gram one day. You know how, like, don't get me wrong, 95% of the comments just like fly off you.
There's
but
always one
that stick with you.
Yeah.
And then one guy writes, "You're a disgrace to Italian Americans," because I was working with an informant, right?
Right.
And I was kind of like, that's not cool. You know, like, that kind of hurts my
Why
feelings.
do you wear
right?
that badge of all people?
So, and I happened to be going to San Gennaro's feast that night. I was with my wife, my beautiful wife, and I go to Il Cortile.
I'm going there December 16th.
A beautiful place. Yeah. And I run into, I hate about this space, but we'll call him Joe. Run into Joe, who is a friend, also a client, but a friend as well. And he was the head of NIAF, National Italian American Foundation.
Right.
So this is the head of NIAF, probably arguably top 3 posts for all Unico, and there's a few others, top Italian American organizations in the country.
Right.
And maybe in the world outside of Italy, obviously, right? So we go to E. Rossi, E. Rossi, the gift shop, and E. Rossi's there, and he sang a beautiful song in Italian, and he sang in Napoleon dialect.
Right.
And he introduced me to E. Rossi, who's an Italian legend.
Right.
And Joe goes, meet Tom LaVecchia, a very prominent Italian American who I'm proud to have, in our community. Right. So now I'm sitting there, I'm getting roasted by somebody, and then on the other. So I said, I got to pick a lane. I said, you know what? I said, and shout out to Angel Gotti too, because I had a 4-hour show with her, and she did illuminate me on certain stuff that I think I was too casual about. So moving forward, new theories about business, new theories about talking to people like you, try to unpack their story, try to have a little bit of the business angle. And then I do have Mobsters Inc., which I'd love to invite you there on sometime too, and try to cover stuff, but not necessarily, just make it all about a certain type of guest, but make it a broader choice. Because there's a lot of non-informant interviews that I've done. Even like I'm interviewing Salvo Rina again, which you talked to Rina's son, the farthest from an informant.
Right.
And I wouldn't call him an informant. He's not an informant, but what I'm saying is him going on TV and sharing his family story. Now, Italy's different. He can't say anything.
No.
No. Funny thing. I had him on the first time, and respectfully, the questions have to be vetted.
Of course.
And for some reason, they missed one of the questions, and I said something along the lines of, being from the former Mafia, blah blah blah. He can't answer that. Because if he admits that he was ever
That's even about
41 bis, so Mafia Association. So I'm learning. I'm just trying to, I'm not infallible. I make mistakes, so I'm trying to learn with my content. But I think conversations like this are a great starting point. And Jeff, I want to thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
This was fantastic.
Anytime.
Thank you so much. So check out Mob Talk Radio, Facebook. I'll put the links below. YouTube. If you want to help out Jeff economically, which is probably the best way to help him out because you get great content in exchange for a low fee, check out. And what platform is that on?
It's Mob Talk Radio at .supercast.com.
Supercast, yeah. And check that out. And let's show him a little increases, show him the power of the New Theory Network. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys next time.